the steps of gram staining. Okay? Remember, the purpose of gram staining is that at the end of this process, we are going to be able to identify whether the bacteria is gram positive or gram negative, and then hopefully using a flow chart, we'll be able to narrow it down into the specific species. You'll notice that I have my PPE on, I have my gloves, I have goggles on, and an apron. These stains will stain your clothing, so I would specifically recommend making sure that you're wearing some sort of an apron to protect your clothing. Okay? I have distilled water here. I have all of my 4 stains, and I like to line them up in order. First, I have crystal violet, and I'll tell you more about what they do when I come to that point. I have iodine, I have ethyl alcohol, and I have safranin. I also have my alcohol burner, my lighter, my disinfectant where my inoculating loop will go. I have my slide holder, which goes over the sink, and I have my inoculating loop. This is disposable, and then also my bacterial sample. I'm going to walk you through this, and you need to follow all of these steps very carefully. This bacteria at this point is still alive. Okay? The first thing I do is I usually take a little bit of distilled water and I just put it on my loop. I find that this is the easiest way to do it without getting too much water. Okay? I take this and I smear just a little bit of water on here. After I do that, and sometimes it's a good idea to have a partner kind of help out here. After I do that, I get a little gather of bacteria. This really needs to be tiny. This happens to be the Serratia marcescens, and this is Anna Garcia's bacteria. Remember, we shouldn't be setting our slides on the ground or on the table. Just kind of doing that for demo purposes. Okay. So I have some bacteria on here. It looks actually like there's not quite enough water, so I'm going to add another drop. You're smearing it around. You should hardly have any bacteria at all. Okay. At this point, I have a circle of bacteria in the middle. I don't know if you can see it there. In the middle of my slide. Okay, it's still wet. You need to let this air dry. Smear it around a little more if you feel like it's going to take forever to air dry, but you cannot wave it around, you can't blot it or anything like that. Okay. This loop now has live bacteria on it, so I'm going to put it in my disinfectant. After this is dry, obviously it's not yet, but it will be for you, I'm going to go through my process of gram staining. Okay. The first thing I need to do is I'm going to light my alcohol burner. Notice that my hair is back. You can use a clothespin to hold this. Okay. A lot of times that's what people use. You want to hold it like this and you want to be real careful. I'm going to light this alcohol burner. Notice it's not just lit while I'm working with other things, just when I need it. And we're going to heat fix the bacteria onto the slide. At this point, the bacteria is still alive. Heat fixing does 2 things. It kills the bacteria, which is good at this point, and it also keeps the bacteria stuck to the slide. If you heat fix this, when the bacteria is still wet, when it's not a film, when it's still liquidy, then you will have issues. So you need to wait till it's fully dry. So this is dry, or at least in my world it is. We're going to flame it through 3 times. 1, 2, 3. And that's it. That's all you need to do. At this point, you extinguish your flame. So I take the lid, put it on sideways, and then let's move this aside. Okay, now what we can do is we can set our slide right here. Okay, very carefully. You can also use your hands at this point as long as the slide's not too hot, which it shouldn't be. First dye that I'm using is Crystal Violet. This is a purple dye. This, no matter what type of bacteria is, remember we don't know if it's gram positive or gram negative yet, this is going to stain the cell walls purple. Okay? So I take this, I put just a drop or 2 on, and I let it sit for 1 minute. Okay? I would highly recommend not having your phone in lab, so have someone count to 60 or watch the clock, do it the old way. Okay? So I'm going to let 1 minute pass. When that's done, you can either use your clothespin or you can pick it up with your fingers if you want, since you have gloves on. And you're going to take this slide and you flood it with just enough water. Okay. so that it's running pretty much clear. You can overdo this process, so you want to be careful. You don't need to dry it. At this point, I don't know if you can see it, this is what it looks like, okay? So it's just a little bit of purple. Kind of see it at the bottom there, okay? Now we're on the second step. Put this back on here. I'm going down my line here. I like to put all of my stains in order. I'm done with the crystal violet. I put it away. And now I have my second stain. This is called iodine or Graham's iodine. Take this, put a couple drops on. I let this sit for a minute also. What this does is this adheres to the crystal violet and it keeps the stain or the crystal violet stain or dye in the cell walls. Gram-positive has really thick cell walls. Gram-negative bacteria has thinner cell walls. Okay, so this is going to kind of start to differentiate between the two types of bacteria. At this point, let's say that it sat for a minute. I'm going to do the same thing. I take my distilled water, I squeeze it at the top, I rinse it out. Okay, no matter what type of bacteria you have on here now, it will still look purple, even under a microscope. Put my slide back down. Now I'm on step 3, and this is probably one of the most important steps and the easiest to mess up. Watch very carefully. This is the alcohol, and this decolorizes. I'm going to take it, and I'm just going to put it drop-wise. That means 1 drop at a time on here. Okay, until the color starts to run out. When it runs almost clear, okay, I'm going to shake it a little bit here. When it runs almost clear, I'm done. I probably put maybe 10 drops total. I can't give you an exact number here. You guys just have to kind of figure it out on your own. Okay, the last step here is called safranin, and this is counterstaining. At this point, you won't be able to see it unless you looked under a microscope, but at this point, pardon me, if the bacteria is gram-positive, it would look purple under a microscope. If it's gram-negative, it will be clear. Now we have to counterstain it with the safranin, okay? So if it's gram-positive, this won't do anything. If it's gram-negative, it's going to dye the cell red. We put this on. We let it sit for about 45 seconds. Okay, so we're going to pretend that that happened. 45 seconds went by. And then the same thing, you hit it with your distilled water. Then we're going to dry it off. So now to dry my slide, I just set it very gently on a piece of paper towel. I'm not rubbing it. Just lightly push down. Take it off. Move it over if I need to, but do not rub your slide. Okay, so it should be mostly dry. Now I have a paper towel. It's labeled with my class period, my name, last name is fine, or first initial last name, and then also the type of bacteria, okay? So follow my directions as to where this needs to go in the classroom, and your slide will sit right on top of this. Okay, how do we clean up now? That's super important. We already have our inoculating loop here in the disinfectant. Remember, when you take your gloves off, I'm seeing some crazy things lately. You pinch your glove, comes off like this. Your other thumb slides under. Never at any point in time am I touching the outside of my gloves. You can touch them now, because it's the inside if you want to. Then follow my directions for disposal for all of this stuff. Please make sure that everything's put away. You need to also have, before you take your gloves off, you need to have bleached your countertop. Your goggles are still on until after you clean all the way up. So you need to have bleached your countertop, put everything away, stored your slide properly, and then you can take your PPE off and then you can wash your hands really well, okay? And then after that, we will look at the slides under the microscope under 1000x power, so the 100x lens, and then you'll see what you have, gram-positive or negative.